Charles, welcome to Future Speak. I'd love you to share some insights that business owners who are looking now to plan to the future might not have thought about.
We're in a collaborative world, and I think collaboration is only going to increase. People are recognizing that they can't make all the innovations themselves in-house.
Charles, welcome to Future Speak, and thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk to me today. I'd love to hear more as to your thoughts with the world of work and the future of work. What do you see are the challenges, the opportunities, both for other organisations and yourself, and the role that you're going to play? But first and foremost, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Sam. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me. So a little bit about me. I actually started life, I studied physics at university and came out, went straight into a role in a research institution, which was part of the Ministry of Defence at the time, but is now Kinetic, which is a large organisation in the UK that many of your listeners and viewers may be familiar with. And I was doing some engineering research there on laser systems and some other fancy stuff that I can't talk about. It was great fun, but really after about 7 or 8 years, I found myself in a position where I wanted to do something different. And so, age 29, about to get married, having just bought a new house, I decided to switch careers as well, which was quite an exciting time for the pair of us. But I moved into intellectual property, training as a patent attorney. And I started in some boutique firms in London who specialise in patent applications and helping their clients get intellectual property for their business, and moved a few times in London, but then I flipped out into industrial roles. So in what we call an in-house role, where a large industrial group may have, the need to have the patent attorney expertise in-house. My first role in industry then was with Black & Decker, that I'm sure many people will recognise the brand, working with power tools and gardening equipment and floor care and all sorts of other stuff. I really enjoyed that because it added such a different dimension to the world of IP. We were getting involved in trade fairs, getting, naughty people who were copying our designs and copying our innovations, getting them kicked out and such like, and thinking more about how the business uses its intellectual property for its gain. So that really sort of lit or shone a light on a different aspect of IP for me. I then went into some leadership roles in-house with Edwards Vacuum, which many people may recognize also as the BOC Edwards brand. I was there for almost 10 years. I went through some fantastic changes that I saw there and learned a lot about the way businesses work. We had 2 IPO processes. First of all, on the London Stock Exchange, we failed to get away, but latterly on the Nasdaq. And after about a year on Nasdaq, we were bought by a large Swedish conglomerate called Atlas Copco. So that gave me an opportunity to learn about business and learn a huge amount about how intellectual property sits within the business strategy. And again, that sort of kept that fire burning for me. Really enjoyed it. But I needed a different challenge and moved into Centrica 5 years ago now. And there was an opportunity to set up a whole new department. Centrica had not had any intellectual property expertise in-house previously. So there's some fantastic opportunities there to get going. But last year there were some changes made, and for all very legitimate business reasons. And I saw an opportunity to set up on my own and set up my own small business, serving smaller, innovative companies and helping them to develop intellectual property strategies to do the right thing with their IP. Quite often I have seen smaller businesses being advised on what they could do. Here are options A, B, and C, but actually what they really need is what they should be doing to make the most out of their IP. So it's about fitting the IP much more closely to the business. And that opportunity came about. I was working with Centrica Ventures. They had a ventures fund, and I was helping some of the businesses that we had invested in. So it was great then to work with small teams. Some of these businesses were really quite small, 7, 8, 10 people, with some fantastic innovation, but absolutely they were desperate to drink up IP advice. So I left Centrica, set up IP Arkitek, and here I am now, 5 months in, serving smaller businesses, helping them make the most of their intellectual property.
Charles, fantastic. And I guess going back to my earlier question, we've gone through a period of accelerated change, as we all know. My belief is that we're at the beginning of continued acceleration, which is only going to become more acute or speed up, whichever phrase you want to use there. What do you see as the opportunity for organisations in the change that's coming?
I think for smaller organisations, they will see more people like me making themselves available, expertise with blue chip experience. Maybe they want to hire me for on a retainer or whatever, but they know that they need IP advice, as an example, but they can't afford somebody like me full time, and they probably don't need somebody like me full time. So I think there's an opportunity to tap into a broader skill set for small, innovative, younger businesses. And I think for the corporates, the larger businesses, there's a real challenge actually retaining skilled people. I think, people, well, I got to a certain age and certain life events occurred, which made me stop and think, why am I working in a corporate environment? It's not doing me any good on a personal level. And that was also a motivation for me to move on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw one of your posts recently where you talked about the fact that it was a real light bulb moment for you. You were tired, you were overworked, you were unhappy, you had no life. How has life changed for you now in the short period that you've had your own business?
Yeah, I feel like a much happier person. I think I'm a better husband, a better father to the children. Although one of my daughters is now away at university, but I just feel like a happier person. I'm not sure my wife would necessarily agree with that, but there are different stresses and strains, but I'm able to make time for the stuff that I like doing. So I've been doing some photography over lockdown and learning an awful lot about how to edit photographs on the computer that I have here, to get some really sort of fabulous outcomes. And maybe we can share a few photographs as part of this if you wish. I'm not doing it commercially, but there might be an opportunity for me to do that at some point. I'm learning new skills in other areas as well, where I hope to make money in other areas. So I have my core business of intellectual property, and I love it. But I'm also able to do other stuff as well to supplement that income or to build my well-being and my feeling of fulfillment.
And it really makes me think about what we're seeing with some of the other large corporates, in that they are encouraging staff, team leaders, people to come to them with their creative ideas for businesses. They're encouraging them to have new hobbies and share them and take time out of work, obviously not to the detriment of their job role, but they're doing that because they recognize the fact that we are turning up to work multidimensional. We have interests and habits and dreams outside of work. And if organizations embrace that, actually what they could find is additional revenue, because they could be funding and do fund individuals to start their own side companies and invest in those and potentially help them grow to sell them. So you really are a testament to what we're seeing out there in the marketplace. Interestingly, one of the other things you talk about from your post recently, and something I hadn't thought about, was with so much change, both technological and just other ideas that need patents and trademarks, is the impact that licenses will have from a cost perspective. I'd love you to share some insights that possibly potential business owners and business owners who are looking now to plan to the future might not have thought about.
Okay, yeah, I think we need to change the dialogue around intellectual property. People think of it as a monopolistic right that stops and closes down innovation, and I don't think. I think that's completely wrong. I think absolutely the polar opposite. The intellectual property system is there to encourage collaboration and inclusion rather than exclusion, and I really believe that. So the whole dialogue around IP for me could do with a shake-up and needs changing. So, for example, a smaller business may have some fantastic software that they're developing for, let's say, the energy sector. But it has applications across every sector. So it may be that they want to, or they feel a need to collaborate with another business, a larger business, let's say an Oracle or or a Microsoft. And the two can come together, and it may be that, and I've seen this before, Microsoft will invest in that company, invest money, but time and people as well. And both will gain from that. Both will learn. Microsoft will learn how their systems are being used in this application and make improvements and developments. The small business will get access to some fantastic corporate minds and technical minds as well. And if you're able to collaborate and say, right, any intellectual property that is developed here, Mr. Small Business is interested in the energy sector, whereas Microsoft actually has got a couple of clients in pharmaceuticals that could really benefit from using this. So you end up with a broadening of your scope and potential revenue streams, not just in money, but in knowledge. Knowledge is money, right? Knowledge is power. So I think there's some really interesting dynamics that we can look at now in intellectual property. We're in a collaborative world, and I think collaboration is only going to increase. People are recognizing that they can't make all the innovations themselves in-house. And I think the sort of old way of thinking, not invented here, is still exists in some more stubborn corporates, but the younger businesses and the more dynamic businesses, the more agile businesses recognize this and recognize that they need to collaborate and share.
Fabulous. And when you look ahead, say 4 or 5 years, what do you see as future opportunities for these kind of organizations from where we're at today?
I think there's some really exciting technology coming. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the future ways of working as well. There's lots of talk around artificial intelligence and things like that, but and there's lots of people who push that down and say, "Oh, it'll never happen." Just wait. If you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for it never to happen, you're going to get disrupted, in my view, and your business will suffer as a result. So, in 5 years, I think the way people interact with one another within a business and the way, for example, the HR department has to think about its people, where they are. Do we need offices? Do we need, how does the office look? Do we need battery hen rows of desks with people on phones, or is there another way of doing this? Some of the innovations I've worked on or seen coming through, for example, in the artificial intelligence, machine learning space, are really good stuff, and this is stuff that's happening today. It's patented, so I can talk about it a little bit, but one of the innovations was using a bot in a telephone call center. So that's basically an algorithm that is as good as human, and to the untrained eye, really, when you're talking, by typing in messages and what's your problem and how can we help you, you know, you really don't recognize that may be software that you're actually talking to, because the language that they can use and the understanding of your language and maybe some of the colloquial terms that you're using is really good. And that will help the call center agent just to answer the questions rather than going through a whole checklist of stuff, ticking off, ticking off, ticking off, ticking off. So it makes the whole workplace much more efficient. And I think that's very exciting in that, people will be able to add value, much more focused value into the customer's needs. And I'm excited by that.
I agree. And lifestyle is something that is becoming more and more important and much more of a priority. And certainly the relationship between an employer and employee has changed very much to that of a partnership, as it should be with everything that's coming along. Question for you. If you could use your photography and turn that into a business, what would you like to do with that? I'm curious.
Turning my photography into a business. Wow. I quite like taking wacky photographs, but I also I'm really inspired, and I'm not very good at it, I have to say, by sort of street photography, reportage type genres. And you look at photographs taken in conflict zones, for example, and you just think about, wow, and you have to look and stop. I want to take photographs that make people stop and think. So how can I use that to make it into a commercial environment? I really don't know. Maybe I'm quite artistic, and I quite I used to do a lot of painting at school, for example. So there's some techniques using Photoshop or Lightroom with other software packages that I use that make a photograph look more like it was a painting, or more abstract. And in that regard, I really enjoy doing that. That it can take quite a lot of time to get the right feeling, but you can bring out sort of emotions and feelings from a photograph just by manipulating, putting on texture layers, shading in areas, shading out areas, and all sorts of fantastic stuff that I'm learning from this course. And one of the ladies on the course, actually, she's from the Pacific Northwest, and she's been a photographer for a long time, but she's just started a little company taking photographs of the local area, applying these techniques that I was just talking about, and selling them as little postcards or greetings cards in the local stores. And I think that's fabulous. Why not? And if it can supplement your income a little bit, she's at a retirement age now, but she's absolutely loving it.
I love that. Fantastic. Charles, I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up today. What 3 takeaways would you like a budding entrepreneur or someone who's looking to plan their business and really looking at the future of work more broadly, what 3 things would you like them to leave with today that could support their business based on your experience in IP?
Okay. So I think number 1 is it's never too early to start thinking about your IP. And it's probably worth more than you think, and it's probably broader and more deeper than you think as well into your business and the importance of your business. It can really, if you get it right, intellectual property can be used to really accelerate your growth and your plans. And don't be afraid of using it in innovative ways. Like I said, you can use your intellectual property to attract new investors, to attract different partners, different collaborators for your business, and help you grow. I'm quite an ambitious person, and I sometimes, overthink and get too excited. So obviously you need to be focused on your core, but there's an opportunity there as well to bring in collaborators to help you develop your business faster. engage with a professional on intellectual property. Patent attorneys and patent attorney firms tend to be extremely good at helping you identify technical inventions and giving you ideas about what you might be able to patent and such like. But I think you also need to have an understanding of how that patent is going to work for you if you go down the patenting route, for example. You also need to understand how other forms of intellectual property, it is absolutely not just about patents. There's your branding, your trademarks, there's your trade secrets and know-how. So think of intellectual property as the stuff that you've got. And then there's intellectual property rights, which are as a separate column, which would be the ways that you protect that stuff that you've got and the ways that can be used to help monetize that knowledge and that creativity that's within your business. That's not really three things, but it's kind of a whole mishmash and a bit of a mashed potato of IP, shall we say.
What's coming across loud and clear, it's way beyond protection, it's commercialization and the opportunity of collaboration. And I guess that's where there will always be the need, particularly for an IP specialist, because you've got coming together of minds and IP and so on and so forth that needs someone to unpick it cleanly to protect all parties concerned.
I think so. And I think having a plan, that is flexible, because you are going to move and pivot and shift. But having a core that is the foundation for your intellectual property plan, and then having the ability to build a plan on top that can pivot with your business, and be prepared to move on. If you've got an old trademark or a brand that you're not using anymore, don't bother wasting any more money protecting it, and be prepared just to move on and move away. And obviously don't waste the money that you invest in protecting your brands or other forms of intellectual property. Yeah. Trade secrets and know-how are the absolutely most valuable piece of IP that you've got, though. So always try and keep those protected as best you can.
Yeah. And actually great advice, even particularly with the world we're in today and we're going into tomorrow, so to speak. Now, Charles, I have one really important question for you. And it's my final one for you today. What one thing would you take with you if you were to be dispatched to a desert island?
Brilliant question. I'm actually a sort of secret fly fisherman, so I enjoy going fishing with my flies down on the chalk streams in Wiltshire and Hampshire. So having already dispatched my wife, the children and the family pets off to the desert island to join me there naturally, because they are the most important things, I would quickly grab my favorite rod, reel, and a box of flies, because we're going to have to eat on this desert island, right? We've got and seafood's good, and there's going to be some fabulous fishing. I know people who've gone to places like Christmas Island to fish for a particular species of fish that can only be found on Christmas Island. It's like 3 days to get there and 3 days to get back. But the fishing is awesome, and probably a bottle of suntan lotion as well.
Okay, so there's several things here, Charles, but I love the way you negotiated through phases. So that was awesome. Charles, thank you so much for coming on today, for just all the great advice you've given everyone, and that the energy you've put into this. I've come away with lots of ideas and takeaways that I'm going to be using in my business to be able to say, have you thought of, and making sure that people really understand that commercialization of IP. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And enjoy your photography and your fishing.
Thank you, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always great to talk to you.